Welcome to the East Anchorage Book Club. I'm your host, Andrew Gray. The purpose of this podcast is to tell the stories of Alaskans of interest and importance. Today, New Year's Eve, 2025, I thought I'd take a look back at a few episodes from last year. I am in my 5th year of producing the East Anchorage Book Club podcast, and every year I've made more episodes than the previous year. In 2025, I released 78 episodes. I honestly don't think there's any way I can release more than that in 2026 without losing my sanity. But the podcast is extremely meaningful to me as both a legislator and as a person. I learn about issues that I'm unfamiliar with. I create relationships with unexpected people. And it really is through editing those conversations that I internalize them and come out of them changed. Today, I'm highlighting a few conversations from 2025 that may have received less attention than others, but that have been especially impactful. The first is with Hollis, who served in the Alaska State Senate from 2003 to 2015, representing West Anchorage. Much of his time as a senator, he was Judiciary Chair. He was my second interview of this past year, and it was through that interview that I was trying to prepare myself to chair House Judiciary for the first time. The meat of that interview was him discussing his use of subpoena power as Judiciary Chair during the Palin administration. Here's a bit of that conversation. Hey, could we talk about Troopergate now?
Sure.
So explain what Troopergate was, and I want to know more about the subpoena power and just a little bit more about the details there.
Troopergate involved a messy family situation inside the Palin family. And it devolved upon this trooper who had taken some actions that displeased the family, essentially. And so what we learned was that Todd Palin was leaning on his wife, Sarah, who was the governor, to fire this trooper. And when they did fire the trooper, he was able to reveal enough to the rest of us to start an investigation. And from my prosecuting background and from Lida Green as the position of the head of the state Senate, no love lost with Sarah Palin. She's got this enormous ability to raise money and do things. She said, we'll hire an investigator and we're gonna find out what happened here. And we hired a guy named Steve Branchflower, who is an extremely well-respected prosecuting attorney from Alaska. I knew him before he left the state, but we got him to come up and we put him in an office and he started following all the rabbit trails. And one of the things he needed to do was talk to about 12 different people. And when they wouldn't meet with him, we issued subpoenas for them to have to sit down with Steve Branchflower and tell their side of the story. And we did that. What we didn't know was that Sarah Palin was about to get named John McCain's running mate. And so suddenly we're in the middle of this sort of a ho-hum investigation. There's no dead body. It was never going to be much more than a
It was like page 6 news.
Yeah, it was page 6 news. It was not the crime of the century. On the other hand, it was a misdeed and we were looking into it. But then suddenly she's John McCain's running mate. And the next day, ABC News, NBC News, the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, probably the coolest thing that happened to me in this whole thing is they sent a guy from the New York Times named Serge Kovaleski to interview me. And I met him at 8:00 in the morning on a Saturday at the downtown LIO. And as I walked up to the door, I thought there was a homeless guy standing around outside there. And I looked at him and he looked at me and said, "Are you Hollis?" I said, "Yes." I said, "Are you Serge?" He said, "Yeah." He was born with 2 withered hands, probably the most intelligent person I ever met. And he is the guy who Donald Trump made fun of, the reporter who looks like this. And he made the noise. That's Serge Kovaleski. Anyway, I spent an hour with him explaining this whole Troopergate thing to him. And then I sat down with ABC News, and it was this incredible media shit show. And they sent professional sort of political hitmen to discredit the investigation, to discredit me. We're going to find out stuff about you and your kid and your wife. It was just dirty politics. And we were able to finish the job. Steve Branchflower found that she had abused her power. This was about 5 days before the election. They lost the election, thank God. And then she came home to being governor and was bored out of her mind. Couldn't finish her term.
Yeah, do you have any insight into that? I just always assumed that it was more fun for her to be a Fox News pundit than to try to run a state.
Even before that, you could tell she was never totally engaged. She always was looking at her BlackBerry. She was never present in the policy discussions. And yeah, I never knew her very well, but yeah, she made her decision. And that made Sean Parnell come into office like a golden boy.
Right.
All this drama. Suddenly there's Sean Parnell. And yet I decided to run for governor against him.
I was going to talk about that. So 2010, you decided to run for governor.
Yeah.
What was behind that decision?
In all honesty, Ethan Berkowitz saved me. Ethan beat me in the primary, and he took the worst drubbing of any Democrat in modern memory. He lost by 30 points.
So do you think that was like a backlash against Obama?
That's a good question. That was partly it. It was the midterms, right? Obama got elected in 08. I'm not sure I'd connected those dots before, but that's probably right. And Sean just seemed stable at the time and normal. And the state just chose stable and normal.
The 2024 election had some upsets, none bigger than when Wasila's Jubilee Underwood defeated David Eastman. I was surprised as anyone that she pulled it off. Here's a bit of my interview with Jubilee. We start off by talking about her relationship with Alaska State Senator Rob Yunt, who in 2024 ran against and defeated incumbent State Senator David Wilson. You're Rob Yunt's representative.
Yep.
And he's your senator.
Yep.
And so he could have run against David Eastman.
Yep. And he was still teetering because he was thinking he was going to run for a higher office, and he just wasn't set on what he was going to maybe do. But he was like, I want to make sure.
Did your decision to run against David Eastman help him decide to run for senator?
Yeah, I was like, I don't want to be a senator. Like, I didn't. I mean, that was a 4-year. I don't know what I'm doing, but I don't know if it helped him or not, or if he already had made up his mind. I didn't give anybody a solid like, oh, I'm going to do this. For a while, because I wanted like 80,000 confirmations that I was supposed to do this before I did it. I was like, this is life-changing. You got to uproot your family. You got to do this. Like, is this something that I'm supposed to do? And it wasn't till, like spring that I really felt, okay, I feel like I am supposed to do this.
I want to ask about praying on it.
Yeah.
And I'm going to ask on it because I sat next to David Eastman for a long time.
Yeah.
And I imagine that his family prayed a lot as well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so I guess it's more like a question in a situation where both sides are praying on it.
When we're both believing this is
God wants you to do this.
But this is my theory. I didn't feel if God tells you to do something, that doesn't always mean it's going to come out and you're going to win something. My belief system is when God tells you to do something and you really feel you're supposed to do it, the most important thing is that you're saying yes and doing it. Because you have no idea what you're going to learn in that process. And win or lose, he may be setting you up for something else that's better, but you never would have learned or been in the position for something else had you not walked through that. It's like this faith journey where it's like, I felt like God was like, do it, but I didn't feel like he was like, do it because you're going to win. It was just same thing for school board. I felt like you just say yes, you be obedient. And in my belief system is like, he is such a good God and he's a good dad. That's how I view the Lord, is he's a good dad. He's never going to tell you to do something that's going to cause you to just have a harmful outcome. But he will walk you through anything, even if it feels that way. But so on this journey also, I didn't know if I was going to win or lose, but I felt in my heart I was just doing what he had me to do, and I didn't know for what purpose. And so that was my mindset. Win or lose, it was like, I'm sure that they were praying about if they're supposed to do it too, but it's the same thing. It's like the outcome is the outcome. But
we've heard a lot about his supporters being particularly aggressive. I think is the polite way of putting it.
Yeah.
Were they aggressively going after you?
Yes, very much. And it's not something like I even put on blast on, but I'm like, if people saw what my inboxes look like or anything like that, it was just, I was going against their person that they believed is the best person for Juneau in Alaska. And a lot of the people that I had talked to one-on-one that were super supporters, they never followed the school board at all.
So they
didn't realize, I'm like, hey, everything you're saying, I also stand for a lot of the same things. And that's what I told people. I was like, we probably believe in a lot of the same things. Like, no questions. I didn't like bad talk him when I was out knocking doors. I just said, I feel like I can be effective and I feel like I can get stuff done. Like, I just want a shot at it. Like, that was like my speech basically. It was like, hey, we're both conservative. I just feel like, it's been there 8 years. I don't know how much I've been able to get done. But I would try to do it as like nicely as I could. Right. And then my own self, I would never say anything bad. I was like, but I just feel like I've been effective on the school board. The community's been happy with me. Like the majority of people that supported me were like, yes, you stood up for our kids. You stood up for parental rights. Like we felt like you had our back. And so I was like, I feel like I stood up for some really good things. So there's my effectiveness and there's my proof. So I feel like I could do good here.
Probably the wildest interview I've ever done was with former Alaska State Senator Republican Josh Revak. While serving in the Army, he had been blown up in Iraq, had to have major surgery to his leg. He was newly married with 2 small children when he moved back home to Minnesota and took a job working on John McCain's 2008 presidential campaign. All while Revak was, in his words, a raging alcoholic.
So your wife was with you in Minnesota with small children, and that's her first experience in America?
Yeah. Yeah.
Was that easy for her?
What do you mean by that? Minnesota's not a bad place to...
No, I know, but I just think like with a relatively new husband who's a wounded vet who doesn't know what he's going to do with his life, and in a new country with 2 babies.
When people say the first year of marriage is rough, I laugh in their faces. Like, yeah, you have no idea. Like, yeah, this is really rough. Yeah. Like, we had it really rough. It was really crazy.
And you were treating your pain by drinking a 5th of vodka?
Yeah, I was a raging alcoholic. Like, I became over time I was definitely... I haven't drank in 11 years, actually, which I'm really, that was really a big deal for me because I had become reliant and I was in so much pain, both physically and emotionally, and just, it was chaotic mess. It was horrible. And then just being cut free from the military. And really, they were right. McCain was in the military. He was military. He was pretty...
POW.
And at the time, we had the convention in St. Paul in 2008. We had a historic Senate recount, and I was right in the middle of all of that. So I got a really big crash course in politics and real fast way. Really great opportunity to see how the gears turn, right? Like, it was really cool for me. I had to pinch myself because I grew up very poor. I never believed I'd be
to repeat the question, how did you get to Alaska?
Yeah, so Minnesota, okay, thank you, Prey, for keeping me out of the spin. Okay, Alaska. So I'm getting there. So after all that, my point to all that was, and I remember it because it was just such a... It's hard to emphasize enough how crazy all of it was for me. It just was remarkable. And so after that, I was exhausted. We were like at the end of the campaign, we were like 20-hour days. And I had this identity issue. And to some extent, I still do.
And I guess like you were functional. When you worked in the campaign, you were still drinking a lot, but you were...
I was very functional, right? Like we're soldiers, right? Like I was a soldier. Like
you weren't like a messy drunk when you were working for John McCain's campaign.
No, I was just like any other drunk political. There's many of them, right? Like just like lawyers or whatever, right? It's we worked hard and played hard and figured out how to survive.
And also, I want to say my staff was prepping me for this interview with you. And they were like, and he's sober. And I was like, which is perfect because I have one of the most anti-alcohol offices in the building. It's a very rare thing. Yeah. I believe that Alaska would be a much better place if people drank less alcohol.
I didn't know you're such a prude.
I am.
No, I'm sorry.
Here's the thing. And I've said it multiple times. There are certain issues that I'm the furthest to the right in the building. Gambling, alcohol. I'm raising the age of consent to 18. There are certain issues where no one's to the right of me. But so alcohol.
That's interesting. Yeah.
And I know a lot of folks who are like sober, they will say things all the time like, I don't care about the people drink. I am not sober. I do drink. I want everyone to drink less. I want everyone would be happier, healthier.
Yeah.
We'd have less suicide, less domestic violence, less child abuse.
So back to me. No, I'm just joking. I'm sorry.
The point was that
my jokes are terrible. My jokes are terrible. I should have warned you. Did they warn you? My jokes are horrible. Thank you for laughing. I appreciate that. I have a bunch of questions there too because I have and I'll get back, I promise. But that's a really intriguing point to me because I've often really battled with this difference in political service between what I believe and what is right for people that I represent. Like, how do you, for example, just because I don't drink, that's a me thing, right? Like other people are able to drink just fine. Like I became very allergic to it, right? When I would drink, I would break out in these squad cars and handcuffs and like weird things. And
were you really getting arrested?
Oh yeah. No, when my family fell apart, and
I get you were getting arrested when you were young. Oh. I'm talking about like you're working for the McCain.
Yeah. Well, after that, I got a DUI. It's just a matter of time. Like I was a ticking time bomb.
And I know that you worked for Don Young.
Yeah.
And
So it's a really quick jump.
Yeah.
So I'm in Minnesota. All that's over with. I'm exhausted, trying to figure out the identity piece. Like, who am I, and all that. And I decided that what I want to do is I want to bring families of fallen soldiers. I want to go visit them and meet my friends' families who we lost. So did that a bunch and ran around. Shane Woods' family is here in Alaska, and they invited us to come up. So I came up to visit their family. I met Congressman Young's staff and never left. They said, have you ever thought about moving here? And I said, what the hell?
At what point? So you got sober 11 years ago. So 2014,
2014. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you worked and you started working for Congressman Young in what year?
2010.
Okay. So
yeah.
you still had a few.
So actually, I wonder if I would even be alive if it weren't for Congressman Young's office, to be honest with you. I remember there was one day, it probably saved my life. Alcoholism is a weird thing. It's like I wanted to stop drinking, and I didn't know how, and it seemed impossible. And it's hard to fathom something like that for somebody who doesn't experience it, right? I imagine. It was hard for me to figure out when I was active in it, but I couldn't stop. And I didn't know why, and I was really miserable about it, and millions of other people experienced that, right? People that you work with can, you know things about the people you work with, or you should know your neighbors, right? And I'll never forget, I was called into the office, and they were like, hey, you got a couple options here. Like, it just sort of busted it out, and they're like, you could go and do a rehab program and we'll give you a raise, or you can find a different job. And I was like, I couldn't even believe it, because coming from the military, it's like, I didn't even realize that I didn't even want to ask for like a month or whatever. It's like, I can't be away from it. I'll be invaluable. And then
you were in DC, and it was your wife.
No, I wouldn't work in DC.
Oh, you worked from Alaska the whole time?
No, yeah, I stayed in Alaska. There wasn't enough money in the world to get me to go to DC. I wouldn't do that at the time. But I stayed here, and I was so happy that I had the opportunity. Like, it wasn't just now I'm letting everybody down and I'm leaving and I'm all screwed up and all the things. Like, it was the opposite. It was like, I have the permission to get well. And that's all I needed.
The first day that you woke up where you felt good after quitting drinking?
I experienced a lot of really horrible physical. I mean, when I quit drinking, maybe you have what they call the pink cloud, where it's like you really feel good. You notice it's very noticeable. So I had the pink cloud where I was like, yeah, I think I want this. I had been to rehab when I was 16 too, and I just wasn't I was in a survival situation. I don't care about getting well. I'm going to figure out how to survive, right? I don't have a problem. I can drink just fine. In fact, even back then, I had a keychain that said I'd rather have a bottle in front of me than a frontal lobotomy. And like, I was known for off-roading sporadically in cornfields.
So anyway, you had a pink cloud.
Yes. So Minnesota.
Please, God. No more Minnesota. You cannot go back to Minnesota.
No, I ain't going back. No.
Okay. So you were saying you had some physical effects.
This is fun.
You were trying to get to the physical effects part. I have so many. He's
got to go. He's got a lot of questions. Oh my God, it's 2:45.
I know. I have committee, but we're going to get to
We haven't even got to you yet.
I know.
All right. Okay. So what was the question?
You said you had some physical effects, some negative physical effects.
Oh,
like
yeah. But... So there's pink cloud, okay. And I went to Breakthrough at Providence, and I really loved it. I ended up running a marathon later with my counselor there, who became a very good friend. Yeah.
With a broken screw in it?
So another long story.
How old were your daughters when you got sober?
Gosh.
Well, I can tell you.
Yeah, let's do the math. I wasn't on the finance committee, so on math ain't my... I'm just kidding. Yeah, they were. That sounds about right. 7 and 8.
So that's great because that way,
8.
like their memories of their dad is going to be as a sober dad.
When I was even when I was drinking, I had these weird ethics where I would read the children's Bible to my kids because that's what my mom did to me when I was young.
I'm so sorry. It's just, I got to say what popped into my head when you said I'd read the children's Bible when I was really drunk. It flashed in my head.
When I was really drunk. Now when I didn't read it when I was really drunk.
Did you watch the Whitney Houston interview with Oprah? Where she was like, what did you do when you smoked crack? And she was like, read the Bible.
You know, that you do. Yeah, as you do. You hey, those are the people that need Jesus. So one of my favorite political wasn't it Rob Ford from Toronto, the mayor? And he's like, so I smoke a little crack sometimes.
I remember that.
You remember that?
I remember that.
Oh my God, he like doubled down.
That was like crazy.
Yeah, that was really funny. Poor guy, man.
I'm now going to play the intros to a few of my favorite episodes just as a reminder of some of the very important issues that the podcast highlighted. Here's the executive director of the ACLU Alaska, Mara Kimmel, talking about American immigration.
Joe Biden was not a friend to immigrants, and he deported more people than Trump has been able to in the same amount of time in office. As an immigration attorney, I have not been satisfied with any party's approach to immigration. I think the best opportunity we had for immigration reform was actually a number of years ago when Marco Rubio was leading that charge. George Bush was famous for having said human rights don't stop at the border. Historically, Ronald Reagan was fantastic at acknowledging and understanding the contributions that immigrants can make in our country. This is not a Democrat or a Republican issue. This is an American issue. Being a nation of immigrants is a foundational value of our country, and it is also a foundational value of Alaska as an inclusive, welcoming state.
In honor of Gay Pride Month, we had the organizer of the Anchorage Gay Pride Parade, J.J. Harrier.
The Anchorage Pride Parade has been around now. This is the 48th year. The first parade was in 1977. Most of the people in the parade wore bags on their heads because they didn't want to be recognized by their employer or by their neighbors. There's a picture, and it's in the archives at UAA, of people walking down the street, maybe 12 people, holding gay liberation signs, some with bags on their head. I just keep saying this year the temperature is hot. It is hot. There are many things that are happening on a national level that I've heard people here be very upset about. While we always want it to be light and airy and peace, love, harmony, we recognize Pride as a time also to push back. The grassroots reality of the LGBTQ community is we're prepared to fight. We're prepared for anything coming our way.
Representative Zack Fields of downtown Anchorage came on the show a few times this past year. He and I, in different episodes, discussed President Trump's pardoning of cryptocurrency criminals, Governor Dunleavy's veto of the so-called Amazon tax, and in June, we discussed the budget reconciliation bill moving through Congress. That was the bill referred to by President Trump as the One Big Beautiful Bill.
That's the fascinating thing to me about this bill is wonderful for China if you want U.S. manufacturing and energy production to retreat and China to just have complete dominance in the world in terms of advanced energy production, vehicle and battery manufacturing. The U.S. is going to lose. Alaska, you could say, is collateral damage in that process. A Chinese foreign agent couldn't have done a better job writing a bill to disempower America than the budget reconciliation bill that passed the House.
There are so many interviews from last year that I'm very proud of. Some got lots of attention. One that didn't get as much as I thought it warranted was my interview with Fairbanks author Dan O'Neill. His interview was part of my media series. Dan and I discussed his latest book, The Impertinent Question, The Words and Adventures of a Liberal Columnist at a Conservative Newspaper in the red state of Alaska. That book was a compilation of editorials that he had written over the past 40 years. Dan O'Neill is fearless. Here's a piece of that episode. You take aim at a lot of sacred calves, so to speak. You go after the military-industrial complex wholeheartedly multiple times. And I think particularly today, given Senator Dan Sullivan's work to increase military spending in Alaska, I think that's very relevant. But you don't just go after that. You go after some others. You go after the Iditarod, which I'll just say no one goes after the Iditarod. In fact, maybe that's where I'll start. I will have you just read this particular story about when you watch the Iditarod. I don't know exactly which year it is.
Yeah, it's got to be early 80s.
Early 80s. I'm going to have you just read this one paragraph from what you observed watching the Iditarod.
Which did you pick?
I picked it right here.
Yeah. Okay. The year I watched the race, a front runner panicked when he thought he was falling behind. He lost his temper with a dog that was too exhausted to eat. He shouted at the dog that if he didn't start eating, he would shove the food down his throat. And then he did just that. He wrenched open the dog's mouth and slammed the food in. This was not a composed and considered, quote, force feeding. It was done angrily and brutally. The musher went on to finish extremely high in the standings and receive an award for having taken, quote, outstanding care of his dog team. So yeah, my wife and I ran our 2 dog teams from Nenana to Nome. And when we got to White Mountain, there's a mandatory layover there of, I don't know if it was 4 or 8 hours in those days. When we got to White Mountain, we said, let's just stay here and let all the front runners go through because I don't want any tangles with these people. Because they were getting crazy. So we watched that scene on video. There was a camera crew taking pictures. So I think it had happened in Koyuk, actually. And I remember saying to the guys, are you going to put that in your newscast? And of course they weren't. And, well, how do you think that will affect the race? And I thought, well, maybe in a healthy way. That's my thought. So anyway, of course they didn't show it. And but it left a lasting impression on me. And the top teams dragged their teams out of that village. I don't know if I wrote that in there.
You did.
They picked up the gang line at the front of the team, and they forced those poor dogs to their feet. They start by standing every dog up. By the time they got to the leaders, the wheelers had sat down already, laid down. And then they go back and do it again. And then finally they just dragged them out. And these are top teams, top names. Everybody knows them. And I thought, this is atrocious. Give me a break. Here, my dogs are popping their harness ready to go. And they've come, they will have gone 800 miles. The difference was sleeping. And then the other picture that is indelible in my mind is as every dog is laying there for their rest, just completely horizontal, legs out straight, and around the nose of each dog was a cube of butter, half a pound of bacon, a package of cream cheese, all this expensive people food within inches of each of their noses, and not one of them twitched to eat. So, sorry, that doesn't work. And I was a dog musher. I like dog mushing, but this wasn't selling for me. So I think that was the very first op-ed I ever wrote, was on that. And at the time, the Yukon Quest was starting up. And there was a fellow named Leo Olson who was running that race. Really good guy, he's gone now. And he, without even telling me, he reprinted that op-ed from the Daily News Miner and put it in the packet of every applicant for the Yukon Quest. Said, read it and weep, boys. Figure this out. We're not going to be that way. So I thought that was cool. It had an effect. I don't know if it had any effect on the Iditarod.
Well, yeah, I was going to ask, do you think it's better now? They have longer breaks, required breaks.
You'd almost have to be out there to see, because the way the presentation is cold. It's sanitized.
Well, hey, I might not have the courage to leave this in, but the reason why I was particularly impressed with that is it might have been 2024 where 3 dogs died, and I had a special order where I said the dogs' names. And my dad was a dog person, and so I was kind of like paying a tribute to my dad and him loving dogs more than people, and talking about these 3 dogs who died. And I ran it by maybe 3 of my colleagues, and they were like, oh my God,
you cannot say, like, are you crazy? You cannot go to the house floor and talk about dogs dying in the Iditarod. Like you misunderstand this entire state, Andrew. What is wrong with you? And I didn't do it, but I've always kind of had that feeling of like, that running a dog to death is not okay.
What you're getting at really is, it reminds me of a question I got the other day from an interviewer in Palmer, but the thrust of it's not the way he formulated it at all, but the thrust of it was, how is it so easy for you to be not nice to people? Something like that. And I had a hard time with the question because I realized it's not something I think about. I really don't think about it much. My fidelity is to the truth, that means documented evidentiary material, historical processes, where the truth makes a difference, where it's important, where it's dealing with an issue that we need to confront, that's important to confront, that will take society farther. Not gotcha journalism, not exposing picadillos, but if it makes somebody madder than hell, but it's important enough, too bad.
Another series on the podcast this past year was Leaving America, about folks who left the United States, why they did it, and how. I profiled guests who had moved to Spain, Germany, New Zealand, and Mexico. But the first episode in that series was with Aaron Poe, who moved with his family from Anchorage to Ireland for the safety of his high school-aged transgender daughter.
I talked a lot about our trans daughter and what it's like being parents of a trans kid in Alaska, in the United States. And in those last 18 months, it's just gotten much, much worse. It was a really hard decision. It wasn't something that we wanted to do. I was just back in the US last week and meeting with some new folks, and they're like, wow, that's so exciting and so wonderful. And I was like, it's not wonderful. We love Alaska and we miss our friends and what's familiar desperately every day. And it's the first time our kids have lived anywhere else. So with their first move anywhere is to an entirely different country. So yeah, a friend of mine described it, you're moving for family safety reasons. And I was just like, thank you for putting it in such simple words, because that's exactly what it feels like.
As co-chair of Joint Armed Services Committee, I've followed the actions of the Department of Defense under Secretary Pete Hegseth quite closely. I had retired Lieutenant Colonel Margaret Stock as a tour de force guest. Here she is talking about Pete Hegseth's address at Quantico from September 30th.
The whole speech was sophomoric, and it was almost like he has no self-awareness, and he's a very immature person, and he doesn't know anything about military history. He's got a couple of quotes that he grabbed out of context that he threw into his speech because he knows he's supposed to have quotes from military leaders. And, he insulted Mark Milley, who is a really great leader. A lot of people admire Mark Milley, and that was thrown in there. The business about he's going to enforce standards. Everybody knows Pete Hegseth couldn't qualify for a security clearance if they were applying the normal standards for security clearance. But he's gotten some exemption from meeting the standards. And he's claiming in his speech that he's going to enforce all these standards when he himself has been the beneficiary of a loosey-goosey drop the standard in order to hire this guy, as a Fox News commentator to be the Secretary of Defense. He was no CEO.
In order to get a security clearance, and then almost like right out of the gate, like sharing classified information on a Signal chat with a reporter on the Signal chat with family members.
Exactly. And they just indicted John Bolton for sharing on AOL allegedly classified information with his wife and his daughter. But Pete Hegseth did far worse than that. And so there's just rank hypocrisy in the whole speech. And I know he was upset because apparently the generals and admirals weren't clapping, but I bet they were all trying not to laugh. This is the senior CEO crowd at the Pentagon, and there's this guy that's acting like he just graduated from high school, and he doesn't like the fact that you had to pass an exam to graduate from high school, so he's eliminating the exam because he can do push-ups, so that should be the high school graduation standard, It was bizarre speech, and if I were him, I would be trying to hide that speech and delete it from everything because it's so embarrassing to Pete Hegseth for anybody normal to watch that speech in there. They're not going to be impressed by the guy. He also talked about the fact that he wants the military to be a place where sons and daughters of American parents will want to serve, any American parent that watches that speech is going to be horrified, and they're not going to want their kid to serve under a guy like him. He's clearly a toxic leader, the epitome of a toxic leader, and he's not aware of any of this. If I were him, I would go out immediately and do a 360-degree evaluation form and see what people say and make it anonymous, because then maybe you'll come to wake up and realize how bad you are. I mean, this is a guy that doesn't meet the standards of the Department of Defense to be a major in the military, and he's now the Secretary of War, as he calls it. It's comical if it weren't tragic.
As the parent of a former foster child, I must mention the state audit that was released in June, which showed that Alaska's Office of Children's Services did not make most of the required reforms stipulated in former Alaska State House Rep Les Guerra's House Bill 151. That bill aimed to transform the way foster care worked in Alaska, primarily through reducing the number of cases that OCS case managers are assigned. Here is the intro to my episode with Les Guerra and the Executive Director of Facing Foster Care in Alaska, Amanda Mativier. She was instrumental in the crafting and passage of House Bill 151.
The legislature passed a comprehensive reform in 2018 to improve the lives of children. The Office of Children's Services did not follow the law. They did not follow almost any of those reforms. They treated them as optional. And if they told you, gosh, this is hard, we're not going to do it, I'm sorry. You do not get to do that. You do not get to look 2,500 foster youth in the eye and say, hey, there was a law. It was meant to improve your lives. It was just hard, so we didn't do it. That does not work, Andrew. That does not work at all.
The OCS director at the time went on record and said, if this bill does not pass and we don't do this, children will die. And guess what has happened as a result of challenges with workforce? Children have passed.
To conclude today's retrospective episode, I want you to hear directly from a former foster child. Here is an excerpt from my interview with Tolly Stone. She is the younger sister of Kilo Stone, who was a guest on the podcast in 2024.
Talk about getting placed in foster care when you were 8 and what that experience has been like.
Yeah, I remember the day that it happened. The day before, my uncle came home with candy, and as an 8-year-old, he wanted some candy. So I asked him if I could have some, but he got it from my cousins, and that makes sense. As an 8-year-old, I cried about it and threw a tantrum, and I was like, I want some candy. And then he was like leaving the room or something, but all I remember is my nose started bleeding. So I got hurt, and then there's like everything after that was a blur. But then the next day at school, I told my friend Janai, and to me, it was normal. It wasn't a big deal. Like, my nose was just bleeding, either by him slamming the door on me or getting hit by him. But to me, that was normal, just like spanking. But then when I told her, she was like, have you told anyone? And I said, no, why would I? And I didn't really think of her question then. But next thing I know, I get pulled from class, and there's like a police officer and the principal and some other people, and they're asking me about what happened with my uncle. And then I just ended up telling the story because I didn't think it was anything terrible. And the next thing I know, Kilo is coming down from her class, and I meet up with her, and then they start questioning us together. And then after that, they took us to, I believe it's the OCS building, and it was just like this little room with toys and like a TV, and they questioned us one by one. From what I understand, her hearing went a little bit different because I didn't know about some things that were going on. And mine was just about my uncle and what happened the day before.
And was it the uncle, your mom's brother?
Yes.
Okay. Where were you all living at the time?
We were living with my mom in Fairview.
And did you go directly to a foster placement from that experience, or did you go back home, or what happened?
After that, we stayed at the OCS building for a while. I remember it being hours. And then finally, we just heard from them saying that they talked to my mom and that she wanted us to go to our neighbor's house. So we ended up going to our neighbor's house as like our first foster parents.
And how was that experience?
It wasn't so good, at least for me. Ella, the foster mom, she abused me with the BB gun. She shot me with them. And I would have to end up wearing layers of clothes, like sweaters. And I could still like feel the BB, like the BBs going through my clothes and everything.
Why would she shoot you with a BB gun?
The reason why she started was because as an 8-year-old, you're curious. I asked her, does it hurt? Because the Nerf gun doesn't hurt that bad. It's a toy. So I just asked her because it was like in the corner of the living room. I was like, oh, does that hurt? And she was like, you want to see? And that's how it all started.
And I assume it hurt really bad.
It did. Yeah, afterwards, like when she was done, I would like look at my stomach because that's usually where she would aim for. And like you just see like little bumps, like just form.
So you didn't stay there that long?
We stayed there, I believe, for a few months. They also shaved my head during that time. So I was bald.
Why did they shave your head?
The reason she told me was because she thought I had lice, but I'm not sure the true reason.
I'm sure that must have been really traumatic.
It was. I had to go to school with a hat. They don't allow hats in school, so they would always tell me to take it off. And then finally, when I took it off, they saw why, and we got investigated for that. And I think that's one of the reasons why we left that house.
Where did you go from there?
From there, me and Kayla went into a emergency foster home. That's when we got split up from the rest of our siblings.
How many siblings are there?
5.
So you and
including
Kilo.
me, yeah.
Yeah, so you and Kilo went to another one.
We went to an emergency foster home. She lived out in, I'm not sure where exactly, but it wasn't in Anchorage. Yeah. So it was like far away. So we had to take like a taxi from her house to our school every time. Yeah.
But you stayed at your same school?
Yeah.
Did you get a more permanent placement after that?
I would think it was like a good few months. And then we went to our next foster home, and I think it was all girls that she had. It was good for the first day. But after that, it was the same thing. She asked me what happened to us in our first foster home because she got like some information about it. And I just told her that what happened, that she shot me with BB gun. She used to make me write sentences whenever I got in trouble, like all through the night. I wasn't allowed to sleep sometimes. And I thought she was being just sympathetic to me. But the next day, it was like a whole different person. Like the compassionate woman that I met before was not even there anymore. So she started like making me do the same things. She used to feed me the same food. Like I was considered obese. So she would feed me salad. I'm a kid and I don't like vegetables, so I didn't want to eat it. So she would feed me that same salad every day until it's literally like rotten. And then that's when she'd finally be like, okay, next to the next one. And it was just the same thing over and over again. I missed school a bunch of times because she would keep me home while the rest of the kids went out.
Why didn't she keep you home?
I honestly have no idea. I just remember being in the house alone with the youngest foster kid she had while Keel and the other kids were at school. She was also the first foster home I ran away from. She just made me do a bunch of things like that none of the other kids had to do. I couldn't do my laundry because I missed a day because I was stuck doing everyone else's laundry. And she was like, we're just going to have to wait until next Sunday. Yeah, if I didn't have good clothes, though, for example, that day when she told me that, I was trying to go outside and play with Kilo and the other kids because I've been inside, but I didn't have any clean clothes. So all I had was my uncle's oversized shorts that I had, but they didn't fit. So she was like, you can't wear those outside. And even if I tried to like wear a belt or anything, she was like, you're going to have to wait. And yeah. And then the day I ran away, she made me go clean the car outside. And I'm just thinking like,
how old were you at this time?
I was still 8.
Still 8.
Yeah. And I was just like thinking at the time, maybe it's me, maybe I'm the problem. So like, I'll just go and see if I can find a different home. And that's when I ran away from her house. I walked down like a few blocks into a different neighborhood, and I found these 2 guys. I was taught stranger danger, but in that time, it was like people that I was told that was going to protect me aren't. I was like, it's either strangers or go back to that house. So I just went up to them, and they were tinkering with a car or something, and I just like hey, I'm in foster care. I ran away from my foster home. She wasn't treating me good. Are you guys able to call this? And at first they were like skeptical, which I understand now that I'm older, but I was just like, please, I just need help. I don't know what to do. So they called the police for me, and then they ended up picking me up from there, and everything else afterwards was a blur.
So did you have to go back to that foster home or no?
Thankfully not. Yeah, I went back to an emergency foster home, I believe, the same one that I lived at before.
Or you had to take the taxi from far away?
Yeah. And then after that, I went to my 4th foster home, which was the longest foster home I stayed at. I stayed with her for 4 years, and she was probably one of the most best foster places I've ever been to. We still had our issues, but I feel like she was the most authentic one that made me feel like I was part of her family. And just like the issues were just like normal family stuff.
I know that you got placed in an acute psychiatric facility.
Yeah.
Are you able to talk about that at all?
Oh, yeah,
What
okay.
happened? Yeah.
The first time I went was me and Rose got into an argument. That's the first time when I went was with her. I forgot what it was about, but I just felt bad for being a bad kid. And I remember she's in the bathroom, and I just went up to her because I don't like leaving a problem unsolved. I like a solution or like an ending to it, because that makes me know that we're okay now. So I was just like, I don't really know what to say to her. I can say sorry, and I mean it. Like, she might not believe it. So I was just like, what can I do to better our relationship, or at least make it better? So I just went to the bathroom, went to her door bathroom, and was just like, hey, Rose, I'm sorry. Like, you can take me to North Star. And she was just quiet. And then she opened the door, and she was like, you want to go to North Star? And I said, yeah. And everything from there was...
Why did you want to go to North Star?
Why did I want to go? I just, like, she used to use it as threats. Like,
Oh,
I
like
was
being
bad.
like, so you were basically saying, okay, I'm bad. I deserve the punishment.
Yeah.
Take me to North Star.
Yeah, like,
to try to prepare your relationship with Rose.
Yeah, because I thought that was what I was supposed to do.
Were you suicidal? Or is that what they thought you were?
I did start dealing with suicidal things at that time. So
Do you
I
remember how
understand
old you
that
were?
reason. I was 8.
You were still 8.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah. Kilo actually walked in on me the first time I tried to. It was with the belt, and I was just like, I didn't know how it worked. I just knew that I didn't want to be there. Not at Rose's house. Just the whole situation. Missing my mom, missing my siblings. I didn't know what was going on with them. And again, I thought I was the problem. So I was just like, I'm going to take myself and make everything better for everyone. So I was just like, okay, this is how some people have said to do it. So I tried it. And then that's when she walked in. And I felt really bad because it just like the look on her face. And Kilo was she still is. She is my mother figure. Like, I understood.
How much older is Kilo than you?
3 years. Almost 4, but I'm picky and I say 3 years. Yeah. So yeah, I really looked up to her. And so when she told me that, I really understood.
So when that happened, she was like 11 and you were 8?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Didn't you guys get adopted eventually?
Yeah. By our family friends that we met through Beacon Hill. That's where we did our visitations with our mom and everything. It was really good. And we met one of our family friends from there too, who also worked there and helped with the visitations. So our family friends adopted us when I was 14.
How old are you now?
I'm 19.
You're 19.
Yeah. They're very kind.
How are you doing now?
Right now, I'm doing good. I'm trying to get into school. I found a job I really like, and I really like the coworkers there. But yeah,
and do you feel like you've recovered from the trauma of what happened?
No, I'm still working on it. Luckily, I have Kilo and Neva too, my younger sister. We're all healing together and just trying to understand each other.
Alaska always needs more foster parents. To learn more about how you can become a foster parent, visit the link in the show notes or call the Alaska Department of Family and Community Services at 1-800-478-7307. You can also find links to all of the podcast episodes mentioned today in the show notes. Happy New Year, listeners. If you like what you heard, please subscribe, rate, and review us. To contact me, email rep.andrew.gray@achinleg.gov or call 907-269-0123.